This morning we have four very distinguished participants from the creative community. I'd first like to introduce Robin Derrick. Robin is the creative director of British Vogue. In over 20 years in the industry, he has worked on Vogue's German, Russian, Spanish, and Japanese editions, as well as co-editing 3 photography books, including Unseen Vogue, The Secret History of Fashion Photography, and People in Vogue, A Century of Portrait Photography. He is formerly the creative director of The Face, Italian Elle, French Glamour, and Arena UK. DOMINIC Lippa joined Pentagram's London office as partner in 2006. His clients range from the furniture retailer Heels & Sons to Espa, and global organizations such as TDK, Vodafone, and Unilever. For many years he was on the executive committee of the Typographic Circle, and he also co-edits and designs their magazine Circular. Established in 1997, Tom Hingston established his studio as a multidisciplinary design agency that works across a range of fields spanning music, fashion, and film, motion graphics, advertising, and branding. Clients include Alexander McQueen, Absolute, BBC, Christian Dior, Lancôme, Nick Cave, Robbie Williams, Gnarls Barkley, and, last but not least, the Rolling Stones. Our moderator this morning is Alexander Fury. Alexander is the fashion director of SHOWSTUDIO.com. He also contributes as a journalist to a number of magazines, websites, and newspapers, including Dazed and Confused, Japan, Harper's Bazaar, ID, the London Evening Standard, and The Independent, and has consulted for various companies, including the BBC. Please welcome them all and show some love.
Okay, so we're going to start with brief presentations from each of our panelists, and Robin Derrick is first.
Good morning, everyone. Bear with me a second. There we go. I'm told we've got 7 minutes to run through what we've done here. Is that paused? I'm not really sort of doing a sort of big creative talk. It's really about change and the things that I'm going through, and which a lot of us are with new media and things. I graduated from St. Martin's. I've got 160 slides, I'm going to go really fast. I graduated from St. Martin's in 1984. I was the last year to be taught hot metal setting. They literally threw it away the week after I did it, and then it was on to photo setting and early Macs. Well, actually Apple IIs. I was on ID magazine doing stuff with Terry Jones and all this computer stuff and Space Invaders things. This is 1980. Massive change at the Face. That was when I lay out my Neville on the first issue I did. Working with Mr. Nick Knight on the Face back in the day. I shot to George Armani campaign with him last week, but this was 1984. Just trying to explain the moving to Italy, the kind of the changes that I've seen from traditional print to the first magazines where we started to use Max, which was Arena for me, and then just going from traditional photography. This was my first cover of Vogue. I joined Vogue in 1993, 17 years ago. It's a Mario Testino cover. This was shot on transparency, so was this, but then we quickly, and that was color negative photography, embraced color negatives. And then this is pre-digital photography, which I saw, this was one of the first digitally retouched covers I did, because we had to turn it around the day that she died. Just massive, massive, massive changes that I've witnessed. But in my opinion, they're nothing compared to the changes that have happened in the last 18 months. The rate of change in the industry is such. And that's really what I want to talk about. This is just dressing, I guess. I think that the sort of road to Damascus moment for me was actually working on Giorgio Armani, on some of their stuff. This was an early campaign I did with Craig McDean, some Matt Marcus campaigns. But it was, where was it? It was more Matt and Marcus. It was, I said I'd go fast through this. It was this campaign where the YouTube behind the scenes video got more traffic than the $3.5 million outdoor campaign. And Fabio Manconi, the head of global communication at Giorgio Armani, who, believe me, is no internet evangelist, said, well, actually, if we made the right films, we don't need to buy the billboard campaign. So we started to sort of move in that direction. And I've just got a few examples now of things I want to show what we did with the underwear this year, a little film I did for Reebok, and the Vogue iPad app that launched on Saturday, which I'll spend more time with. But this is just some of the background, some of the steps. So what we did after this kind of phenomenon, now, you know, the phenomenon is not the phenomenon of the internet, let's be clear. The phenomenon is also the phenomenon of David Beckham in his underpants. The celebrity is driving the traffic, not the web. But it is, nevertheless, the platform is there. So what I did for Armani was we built Armani.com, which is a video player, and it has all the links out, the Twitter and Facebook and YouTube links, and it has dedicated YouTube channels, in order then to start creating assets that we could then start distributing ourselves. This has proved hugely successful in that there are now currently 1.5 million people engaged somehow with Armani online, either as an email follower, a Facebook sign up, a Twitter follower, and the brands don't really care. I'm doing this for a few brands now. They're just happy to have these engaged markets. What I want to come on to is what it means you have to do as a creative director and how that changes our jobs. So this is a rather dreary picture. It's a rather dreary picture because it was taken on set while we were doing film. This also is a behind the scenes from the film with Megan Fox and Christian Ronaldo. They ended up as a billboard, but it was this phenomenon here when we did the films. I'll show you the films in a sec, where we were able to do these films. They're rather traditional sort of advertising films, actually. I was disappointed with this script that got approved and Mr. Armani's choice of director, but that's, what can you do in a way? But by kind of creating the right channel and using Christian Ronaldo's and Megan Fox's Facebook things that between them had 15 million followers, you know, getting 2.5 million, you know, 3 million hits, and those were all in the first couple of days, and it becoming the 3rd highest viewed YouTube video in the world that week. That sounds really, I don't know how interesting that sounds, but I think what's important to remember from that is that that's 2.5 million views before, is that where I get? Yeah. Before they bought any ad space, before they've done anything. You know, it's kind of, that's just putting the asset out there and careful shepherding of traffic. I go to slide number 1, presumably, and then turn it all in. Do I have to click on that? Yeah, play. Play, where's the play button? There we go. This, I believe, is that film. What? Next slide. Next what? How do I do next slide? Here? Oh, there we go.
Room service.
It was directed by Johan Renck, who did the H&M commercials.
If you want my loving, if you really do, don't be afraid, baby, just ask me. You know I'm gonna give it to you. Oh, and I do declare I do, I wanna see you with it.
No. Thank you very much.
I mean, you know, it's a kind of jeans commercial, very sort of straightforward. So if we did a similar reverse type of film with Christian Ronaldo, who's looking for a shirt and the maid hides it from him ultimately. I won't take you through all of this because I know we're running out of time and I want to move on to other things. Oh, hang on, I don't want that to play. Will that not play? Okay, stop. I mean, I think the way that so on that Megan Fox campaign, this was the list of things I had to return with from that shoot. I mean, bearing in mind that 18 months ago I was spending $6.5 million a season for George Armani, doing maybe 80 stills and just delivering the campaign and putting it back on his desk. Whereas now, it had a teaser trailer, a teaser trailer for the film, a 30-second full-length film, a downloadable advert with e-commerce links, behind-the-scenes video stills, a 60-second extended film, general release photos at Armani.com, ultimate exclusive photos from print campaign, interactive banner ads, desktop wallpapers, etc., etc., etc. It's extraordinary, really. I would quickly show. I don't know, how am I doing for time? Am I doing alright? Am I going okay? This is a little film I directed. This was another point I wanted to make, which is about repurposing. That was a little film that I did for the web, for Armani. And then it's now, not you, it's, how do I play that slide? Oh, when I go back? I didn't make this film, and excuse me. But this was made to go on the web. It's now the largest digital billboard in the world, in Moscow. It's a 210-meter billboard. Everything gets repurposed as well. Everything you do, you think it's going to be this big, it's that big. It's extraordinary the way stuff gets out of your control and then kind of sort of goes on. And I guess what I'm saying is I'm sort of feeling this. I'm sort of in a digital whirlwind and this kind of explosion of stuff. Okay, that's all my stuff there. So I really want to show you what else I've been doing. So this launched Saturday. I've been sort of 6 months developing this thing, which is too long as a development cycle for an app because actually the world's changing so quickly that I wouldn't have built it now the way I just did. The industry is in such change that right now a downloaded issue of a magazine doesn't count as a sale of a magazine. It's a bit like the music industry was 5 years ago. You know, digital magazines, what's that? You know, you have to buy them. You know, it's like they don't count the download charts. So unless you download something very simple, which is a PDF of the magazine, which is what I have here. I won't show you the PDF player, but that contains all the pages of the magazine and some links and things. What I'm trying to do is sort of reimagine some of this stuff, because at the same time as all that's happening with the web and communication, there's this crash between still and moving image, which is a sort of different kind of technology. So what I did for this was I sort of reimagined the fashion stories within the magazine in a sort of digital way. So we're sort of shooting, so this is a sort of way to mix up stills and video on the same shoot. What I've done is I've built in Objective-C the operating system off the pad, a bespoke player that takes you through both backwards and forwards. It's not stop, start, play video. It's a sort of re-treatment of a story because all photographers can't be directors. You say I want some moving image, they say I want. You want me to direct? No, I'm just after a mixture of stuff. I'm trying to go quickly, it comes so well, I've got too much stuff. So let's go back. If we look at, say, so what we did with Mario Testino, who photographed a series of stills for the magazine, which I began to put in this player. Then I also got him to do video portraits on all the girls. There's been a bit of a big, I've been a sort of Twitter campaign on this over the weekend, quite a big sort of social media campaign. It's been a nightmare to drag moving image out of some of these people. Putting 7Ds into Mario Testino's hands, not the most intelligent thing to do maybe, quite tricky, people are struggling with the transition. That's kind of it really. I'm just sort of in this mixture of trying to pull different new media bits and pieces there. That's where I am. I think I've spoken enough. Go on, let's go with, I don't know, I was so bad it's going to take it too long. Let's go on to the next slide. Sam.
Ironically, before I was telling Alex earlier that I was going to start off my sort of presentation with a slide, which is a bit of a joke slide of people doing hot metal, because I graduated the same sort of year from then LCP, now LCC as Robin, and he's absolutely right. I mean, I remember doing everything in hot metal and letraset and wet transfers and weird cow guns, shit like that. And I think when I was talking to Fabian about doing this sort of conversation, it sounds like there were two themes that were going to come up. One was collaboration, and one was sort of the advance and change of technology. I've, rather than Derrick, I think, done more on the technology. I'm only going to show two projects compared to Robin's 170 slides, so it might be shorter. So I'm going to talk a bit more about collaboration, and there is a bit of technology, but not so much. But I think the interesting thing for me, having worked now, and it is frightening that it feels like 25 years or 26 years, how things have changed. I mean, I remember getting the first fax machine in, because we had telex machines, and you know, you talk to anybody. If I talk to my daughter now, and I was talking to her about buying a CD, and she just doesn't buy CDs. I mean, you know, she doesn't know what an album is, and she just downloads everything. So everything is just moving, you know, incredibly fast, as Robin has said. But I think for me, you know, even though I now work at Pentagram, which is this large international design company, I ran my own company for 16 years, Lippa with Harry. And the interesting thing for me has always been about collaboration. I mean, Pentagram started as a group of collaborators in 1972. So this idea that one person does everything, I think, has always been sort of wrong. It's always been about a mixture of talents coming together that produce something as an end result. So the project I wanted to start off with is something I did last year for Shelter. I mean, it was a project that came in with through the ad agency Leo Burnett, and Rick Brim and Dan Fisher, the two creative directors, have been working on this campaign for Shelter called House of Cards, and they wanted to extend the whole campaign into a fundraising activity. They wanted an identity for that fundraising called House of Cards. But there's things connected with not being too much like the Shelter identity, but to collaborate with the work they've done. And their work, to me, had been stunning. It had a really strong idea of these beautiful images of buildings and houses made out of cards. And I'm just going to show an ad which some of you might have seen. And in a way, this is how they briefed us. And it was all about how I could collaborate with their creative team to sort of move the whole project on. So this was the ad they produced for Shelter.
estimated 75,000 homes will be repossessed this year, and nearly 2 million households already await social housing. The housing crisis is real. Please help us to provide urgent advice and support. Text the word shelter to 67777.
I mean, I thought the ads were absolutely stunning, and what they had an idea of is actually creating to raise money for shelter. A pack of playing cards. They had invited 53 artists and designers from Terence Conrad to David Hirst to produce a piece of work, to produce a card, and all that work will be then auctioned off at the Haunch of Venison gallery in town. So they wanted an identity, and to me it doesn't matter where the idea comes from. I mean, the collaboration with Rick and Dan was brilliant, so there was a lot of interaction about coming out with an idea together. And it was one of the situations where, you know, we wanted the connection with shelter and the identity, but not being so obvious. So I took the symbol of the house, which is part of their identity, and what I always like about symbols is that they're self-explanatory, so everybody knows that that is a house. And then if you sort of marry that up with a symbol from a suit of playing cards, you instantly got the idea starting to come together. But what I liked about the ad was this whole idea of tumbling. It was the whole idea of everything sort of collapsing around society. So what was nice about the idea is that whichever way you did it, you had a House of Cards idea starting to come to fruition. I mean, I think what Leo Burnett, I mean, the nice thing about what Leo Burnett did for us was we actually never met the client. We actually never had to sort of work with shelter. They protected us from that sort of political animal. So it's just about us and the ad agency working in collaboration. We then started to use all the symbols from the suit of playing cards, and in a way building this idea that they wanted something, because eventually the piece of packaging that I had to produce, which is a sort of A5 box, was going to be sold for £100 and sold in Harrods or Selfridges. So it needed a quality to it that was more than just a graphic idea. So we started to play around with a pattern. If I can move this on. And so whatever scale I used it at, it had a sort of very immediate effect. And then we created a symbol for the House of Cards again, so the whole idea is embedded in the house and the cards, and the whole idea of actually everything being upside down, I think was a nice playful way of extending the idea. So whichever way you looked at the symbol or the logo, it started to resonate with the original campaign Leo Burnett did. And then we started to do that, you know, extend that onto all applications. I think what's happening, increasing to all of us, is that any idea has to work on any platform. So whether it's an ad, a card invite, a poster, excuse me, or online, this idea had to work. So eventually, I mean, we weren't involved in the animation, but it was taken and animated online. And then we did a catalogue, and the whole idea of playing cards with the rounded edges was carried through. So to me, it was always about taking an essential idea and being able to apply that across different platforms, working with Leo Burnett. I think our remote has died. So I'm pressing the wrong one. So that's, I said, we did the box for the playing cards. So the whole idea included packaging. I mean, I've done 20 years of packaging, so for me this is just a really nice, and everything was just, you know, black varnish on a black box. So it was actually about subtlety. And then we did the whole playing cards. I mean, the essential, I mean, this is a pro bono job, and the end result was that the exhibition raised £100,000 for shelter. They sold all the pieces of art, and to me that's a successful campaign. The only other project I wanted to sort of quickly talk about, and this is not my work, this is my partner Harry Pearce's work. We've actually worked together for over 25 years, I think. We worked with a couple of agencies, then we set up Lippa Pearce for 16 years before joining Pentagram in 2006. And I think the one thing Harry and I have always been fascinated with is typography. I mean, I've always said it's because Harry and I can't draw. You know, it's our form of expression. And many years ago, whilst we were at Lippa, Harry started playing around with these sort of typographic conundrums, and this was just something that he would do in his own spare time. So this was scrambled eggs, this is mixed feelings, and they were just a way of Lippa sort of communicating with our clients in quite a sort of subtle and unpushy way. This is Gone But Not Forgotten, Last River to Cross, and you won't be able to read that, but that's a Small White Lie. So, you know, so it's always just a playful thing for Lippa to do, and eventually I think this is something like, I might be really wrong, something like 2001, we did a poster, and this is our Christmas mailer to clients. And what's happening a lot was we were involved with a lot of sort of charities. We were doing work for a human rights charity called Witness with Peter Gabriel, and we often raised money with our Christmas cards for these different charities. But out of that idea, there's a writers' organisation called 26, which liked the idea of taking these conundrums, and 26 wanted to use it for their own mailers. So the idea was transferable. I suppose what I wanted to sort of talk about is the fact that what we've always done as a collaboration, which I think is quite underused, is working and collaborating with writers. I mean, to me, the written word is such a powerful medium in itself. So, and one of the founding partners of 26, John Simmons, has been an old friend. So we worked with him on a lot of projects since then. And then out of that, 26 and the writers sort of charity called International Pen and UNESCO approached Harry to do a visual installation at the London Design Festival, which I'm involved with every year. So last year Harry worked on this idea of freeing the word, and it was actually about marrying up a writer from International Pen and a writer from 26, and to share sort of stories and actually talk about it. It's all about narration, it's all about the power of the words. But traditionally, I think, like 20 years ago, this would have been a very static expression. And what has changed in technology is the ability to create very beautiful moving images. But what sort of Harry wanted to do was again collaborate with somebody. So he's known Simon Sankarari from All of Us for many years. So collaboratively, they worked on this installation last year. And I'm going to end on just playing this movie. But it really is about the sharing of stories through words and different languages in terms of a sort of power. And you literally would go to this darkened room. But we'll play the film now. But I think, as I say, many years ago, this elegance and beautiful sort of typography could not have been done without the change of technology.
I know now a few more things about Basque. Firstly, it has more X's and Z's in it than any other language I've ever seen written down. I read that the American poet Phyllis Levin described it as like a treasure map because of all the X's.
Garai berean, beren neurrian, aldaketa lagunduz, jonetsaile eleberri klasikoan.
So these are all different languages from around the world. And again, interestingly enough, everything was done virtually, so these people never met each other. Films were sent over, voices were just, it's a total collaboration but done without anybody actually meeting.
Translation is the process of making a bridge that two writers can walk across from different sides. Whatever flower you are a flower of beauty.
¿Qué clase de flor tan hermosa eres tú? Un saludo con un poquito del dolor de la mano que nos ha unido. The pain in the hand that has united us.
Also la voz del alma, the weaver of life. Intagnesi e Iotto, from the eye of the yellow star. Omundu Omunye, the sound of human song.
I haven't got much more to say, except I think I'd rather do Megan Fox. Anyway, I can stop this now, 'cause I think we're running over.
Morning. Because we haven't got long, I have picked out 5 projects that we've worked on as a studio, which hopefully demonstrate some of the diversity of our approach. They're projects which engage in the notion of collaboration. They're also a mix of kind of print-based projects and motion-based. So I think we've probably got like 5-6 minutes, so I'm just going to run through them and have a chat afterwards. So the first project I wanted to show you was a project that we've done for Massive Attack. Now, we've worked with Massive Attack for over 10 years. We've done all of their albums since from Mezzanine onwards. But 100th Window is particularly interesting as a project because it was one of the first music projects that was a studio that we approached, I guess took a kind of broader, more holistic approach to the campaign and the imagery associated with the campaign. There was a kind of visual metaphor which tied into some of the themes behind the record, which was this kind of fragile human figure which was made from glass. And we shot the campaign both as stills, but also as film. And this was produced in 2003, so you know it's 7 years ago, and things like kind of YouTube and iPhones and all of the different platforms that you've got now, which exist, just weren't around at that time, and so it was a kind of interesting and challenging project, if you like, for us to kind of embark upon. And also the process of realising the final results. We went through a whole process of actually commissioning a glass blower or glass sculptor to make each of the glass figures that we then photographed and then filmed shattering. So I think we built 12 figures in total, and this was a project that I'd worked on with Nick Knight and also 3D from Massive Attack. So I'm just going to show you some of the imagery which shows the process of us of kind of creating these figures. So first image is making the actual form, which we did over at a little kind of workshop in Clerkenwell, and this guy who made the figures for us had only ever made, I think the biggest piece he'd made was a kind of half-metre dish for Liberties, so it was kind of quite an unusual commission for him to be engaged on. These are just some of the images of him actually blowing the glass pieces. So he literally had to make each limb, each part of the body separately and then kind of bind it all together. And then when they turned up at the studio where Nick and I were shooting, they turned up in these kind of wooden crates. There was a very sort of odd delivery today from the courier. And there was 12 of these, each one in a different colour. So we spent a day shooting them as stills. And the stills lived obviously as covers and as part of the print campaign, and also, you know, online, but only at that time, really only on either on Virgin's website or on the band's website. And then these are just some of the short films that we made, which I think were shown very kind of very limited access. It was like cinema ads that ran for about 2 weeks, and then some stuff on TV. So here's the films. And then the whole process of creating those films and those stills we documented, almost like a behind the scenes, and that imagery formed part of the book and also the stuff that was online. But I remember talking to Nick about it years later, and it was quite a big undertaking for us to do that project, and also quite a big financial investment on the label's part. I think to probably produce a project like that now would be far cheaper, just because of the technology that's available. And we were saying the frustrating is that it got such kind of limited and exclusive viewing that now, with motion-based billboards, YouTube, iPhones, as I said earlier, it would have, that stuff would have had much, or all that material would have had much wider exposure, essentially. And it was interesting because it was a cover that had a very sort of divided opinions. Sort of coming on from Mezzanine, which was the previous album that Nick and I had worked on. Some people really loved this cover. Other people couldn't stand it at all. But the point that they were missing was it wasn't just about the cover. It was about the moving image. It was about the imagery in the book. It was about the whole process of kind of creating a kind of mass of material, if you like, and imagery. Okay, next project. New York Times Star magazine. For those of you that haven't seen it, the Star magazine has got this really lovely Gothic tee on the front, and they invite, for every issue, they invite a different image maker, artist, designer to give their interpretation of that Gothic tee. And we were invited last year to produce a cover, and it was for their 5th anniversary issue. And we decided to collaborate with a company called UVA. Now, for those of you that don't know UVA, they are a kind of amazing kind of art installation artists. And we'd met when they were doing all the stage visuals, or the tour visuals for Massive Attack. And we've been saying for years, it'd be great to collaborate on something. And this little project, because it was non-commercial, it was editorial, it seemed like a kind of perfect opportunity. So this is the cover that we produced. And what we wanted to do was kind of deconstruct the letter form and express it, for want of a better word, in a more kind of organic way. And so we built a sculpture, which we then lit and photographed. So in actual fact, that front cover image is actually all in camera, although it involves a process of finding moths, 3D scanning, lasers, glass, and light. So I'll just talk you through. So this is our studio moth collection, which was basically where it all began, and then we 3D scanned these, or had them 3D scanned, and then constructed them so they formed the composition of the letterform. And that's one of the early raw renderings when we were kind of piecing the thing together. And we also, it existed as a lovely piece of print, as a front cover, but we also then made a film which went onto the New York Times website. And the film is really short, and it is very much a kind of extended moment. It's like a kind of moving version of the still, basically, and it just kind of goes to demonstrate if you want to do a film, it doesn't have to be this long scripted piece. It can just be a moment, an extended moment that's like 30 or 40 seconds long, that's a moving version of that still. So I'll just show you that now. there you go. Next project is two films that we produced for Nokia, and they were for their in-store environments. Really interesting project. For those of you that haven't been into their stores, just to give you a bit of context, I think they have like 15 flagship stores all over the world, and they all have a very kind of similar aesthetic. And basically, they have screens that line the interior skin of the store. And what the brand were doing was commissioning a whole series of films and a whole bunch of content that could exist within the store environments. So a bit like kind of digital wallpaper, if you like. And because obviously the consumers in the store, the content doesn't have to be branded. So really lovely project, because it was like doing kind of short art films. And really, it was a very open brief. They would give us a series of themes and words that tied into the brand DNA. So, for instance, spontaneous interaction, community, simple words and phrases. And then you would go off and produce a 2-minute or 3-minute film. The first film I'm going to show you was a piece called Windows. Now, you just saw back there how kind of high-tech and slick the environments look within their stores, and what we were interested in doing was actually producing something that felt very kind of humanised and lo-fi almost, as a kind of contrast to the store environment. So the first film's actually called Windows, and it's the idea, it's all of the kind of spontaneous gestures that people may or may not do when they're behind a window or a piece of glass. And so it's just playing on that. The second film is a piece called Mural, which is about a group of people working together to build one big long mural. So I'll just play you those films now. The interesting thing about producing those films was ordinarily whenever we've done motion-based stuff, we've always edited to a soundtrack, but with those films we worked the other way around. So we shot them, edited them, did all the post, And then I gave them to an old kind of friend and collaborator of ours, Nick Phillips, who did all the audio. And what was great actually was, having spent nearly 8 weeks, you know, going through the process of editing and putting those together, you know, they lived in a kind of silent space, and then handing them over to Nick, and then what he came back with, which was that the audio that you heard then suddenly gave them a whole new kind of lease of life, which was, you know, it's a very interesting way around of working. Next project was for Solange Azaguri Partridge, the jewellery designer. We redesigned her website just over a year ago now, and for those of you that don't know her jewellery, there's a kind of very playful aspect to a lot of the pieces, and she was very keen to kind of you know, exploit that notion within the website, because a lot of jewellery brands, the tone of voice that they have is kind of very serious, and it's not playful at all. And we created a whole series. We built the website, but we also created a whole series of animations, so that when you come into the website, the first thing that you engage with as a user is something that is very kind of playful and a little odd, I think, as well. So I've just put together some of those animations for you to have a look at. And they're really simple, really graphic, but they just play with the notion of colour and shape and form. Last project, and I'll run through this as quick as I can, is Grace Jones. We were commissioned to do her last album, Hurricane. Grace came to us with an idea that she really loved the notion of her somehow being seen to kind of manufacture herself, you know, and the implication there is that she's in control of her own identity. And that was it. It was a very kind of simple notion that she came to us with, and we went through a whole process of exploring different manufacturing sort of production line processes. So from furniture to pottery to cars, and we found these amazing reference images of Thornton's chocolate factory up in Derbyshire, and they were making Easter eggs. And there was just something really lovely about the idea of making Grace Jones out of chocolate, and which she agreed to. And originally we were just going to go up to Thornton's in Derbyshire and just use it as a location to do the shoot. And when we did the recce for the shoot, the guys that run the factory got really excited about the project, and they were saying, well, they asked us, well, how are you going to actually manufacture the bits that are Grace? And originally the idea was that we were just going to make them out of brown plastic and cast them in London and then ship them up there. And they're like, oh no, you can't do that. We'll have to make them for you. So they literally made us 15 versions of Grace out of chocolate, life size. So these are just some of the stills from the campaign and from the shoot. So every single one of those on that conveyor belt is chocolate. But, you know, what's interesting about that project is there was a whole kind of process that went on behind it. It wasn't just simply, you know, it's interesting that I always think from a kind of an outside perception that people must just look at, or a lot of the time will look at a record sleeve or look at an image and just think, okay, well there's an image and there's some type on it. Well, there's obviously a whole process that goes on into realising that image and realising that idea. So this is just some of the kind of images of us working with Grace to create the moulds for the chocolate. So this is Grace having her life cast. And then these were the first chocolate moulds. And in fact, the one on the right hand side is one they did for free, which was one made out of treacle. And there you go. Here we are. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much to all three of our panellists. What we'd like to do now is just kind of discuss amongst ourselves, I guess, some of the ideas that were raised, and I think there's a really interesting discussion to be had about kind of the differences and the similarities between all the three disciplines and the ideas that we've discussed. As Dominic said, two of the things that we kind of isolated to talk about was the ideas of collaboration and also ideas of changing technologies and how those have kind of transformed the way that we work. I have a feeling that we're probably going to get really involved in the discussion about technology. So as an aside, I wanted to talk first of all about kind of collaboration and the way that you work with collaborators and the way that you kind of find collaborators. I'm wondering, looking at these projects, there are so many different people involved in kind of the process of actually making them. You collaborate with so many different people. Has it become easier or more difficult to kind of find those people, and the fact that now you probably need to work perhaps with a wider range of people than you worked with in the past? So who would like to start off?
I've always found it quite easy. I mean, I think by the last 25 years I've always collaborated in some form. So even now, you know, as I said earlier, Pentagram has this sort of network of collaborators, and sometimes it is difficult, but it is all based around trust. If you trust somebody, whether it's a photographer, writer, filmmaker, animator, and you're on the sort of same wavelength, and the client, which I think is also a collaboration. It hasn't really changed that much, but I think if anything, because the fragmentation of the industry, there are more independent people out there, and therefore it's better.
I think, is this on? Yeah. I think that, what was I going to say? I mean, I'm amazed how many people I work with now that I worked with 20 years ago, which indicates that it's hard to find collaborators. However, one of the things about this technology, which are, you know, the interweb and all these bits and bobs, is there is a democratizing thing going on. I think I'm really, you know, right from the beginning, you know, I mean, I started independent magazines as I Did Faces You Saw, you know, and the new Adobe software for the iPad enables you to actually make the magazine, send it off to Apple, and they'll distribute it, and that's free. You know, the idea that, and that's exactly the same quality as I've done with Condé Nast and Vogue, you know, and it's basically all this stuff is coming together, and I do see a mass of new people and new collaborators, and I see a kind of a broadening out of the whole thing, and I like that. I dislike my hopes are that it's not going to be populated by the same star system and the same generation of photographers and art directors and creative directors that have been around. I would like to see there ought to be more independent people and more collaboration, and there is a rich source of collaborators, I think, going on.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think it's also relevant to whatever you're doing, whatever the project is, that you find those collaborators, basically. You know, for example, the New York Times cover, we couldn't have realised that without someone like UVA, or, you know, sort of tapping into their skill set. So I actually think I've always found it pretty easy, you know, and I think it's relevant to whatever you're doing.
I was wondering as well, that kind of talk of pulling additional people in to work across these different platforms, and I was quite struck with something that you said, Robin. I was wondering about the idea of kind of ownership of your ideas. Do you feel sometimes that it's a bit of a compromise and you have to give your idea away to somebody else to work with, and then perhaps they'll come back with something that you're not entirely happy with? Is that difficult to do?
I don't know. I think the ideal collaboration is when you give someone a ping pong ball of an idea and they come back with it and sort of blow you away. And I think, I don't know, I think I like to be quite generous, but I mean, I'm so busy that if the cat has an idea, we'll use it. I mean, I think we need stuff, and I despise when people are quite protective of what they're doing, and real collaborations, you know, are kind of born out of kind of a sort of mutual goal in some way. And whether that's an interesting thing and something nerdy about the production, like Thornton's getting really into doing that or something. I think I keep looking at you, and that collaboration, that film you did with Bruce, must have been an amazing collaborative. The Ruth Holcomb show, it was an incredible mixture of you and her. I think when you see those things, in my line of sight, that when a real collaborator, we should have mentioned Nick Knight a lot. You know, I always say you give that guy. The idea is to do a picture of a girl in a mirror, and it comes back and goes whoa, and you go, yeah, that's it. Collaborators should exceed your expectations and bounce your ideas back harder than you served them in the first place.
And also what Dominic said just then was the idea of kind of clients, and the client as being a collaborator in a sense. And also, I suppose, in fact, with any collaborator, do you think the way that you've communicated with them has changed over the past we'd say the past 5 years as a ballpark, but I'm interested in how, kind of to bring them together, how new technology has changed the way that you collaborate with people and the way that you work together.
I mean, I think, Alan Fletcher once said to me when he was alive that the reason actually Pentagram had been quite successful over a long period of time is actually because they had very good clients. You know, and that, I mean, I don't think, we never think at Pentagram that we can work with everyone. I think there are people that get Pentagram and get us, and that's where it works the best. I mean, we've all had good relationships or bad relationships. For me, when there's a true collaboration with a client, and I don't mind whether the client has ideas as well, whether it's the cat or the client. I think it all goes to that same end result. I mean, I want the client to be supportive of us, and we are the clients. And I think clients sometimes get, bad press, but I think they get, because they're aware of things. I think everything, and before we came out, I mean, Robin was saying about, the last 18 months, 2 years has been a significant change, as I think it was when Macintoshes first came in. These are these little moments in time where things are shifting. But again, I think that clients are coming to us to do more than just a brand identity. It is a cross-platform, and it's happening more or less on every project. We have an advantage of Pentagram is that we have product designers and architects, so we are naturally quite collaborative in that way. But But equally, if you have a crap client, it's as bad as having a crap collaborator. It doesn't work out, and then it's a disastrous situation.
I think as well, it's interesting. You kind of touched on it there. This idea that people are coming to you guys now with far greater expectations than they used to. You know, Tom was talking about the fact that you did kind of motion image and the still images for Massive Attack, and that there was nowhere really to sort of showcase them.
No.
Whereas now, like as Robin said, there's kind of clients are coming to you now and demanding to be on all of these different platforms. I'm wondering, do you find that kind of more difficult? Is that kind of more creatively exciting, or is it kind of
raises the game? I mean, I think if consumers or people are demanding, whether it's my daughter or whoever, I think that's great. I think it's just getting. If everything becomes easy, then I think it'll all sort of slip.
Yeah, I think it does. It makes it more exciting. You know, I remember that one of my early reasons for wanting to get into doing music and sleeve design is that actually that work got quite wide exposure. So for me, I think it's really exciting. There's even more platforms that that content can sit on, definitely.
I think what's interesting is that in Vogue magazine, there's a lot of people walking around saying they work in fashion, and they don't. They work in publishing, and they kind of forget that. And I'm as excited by the sort of communication as I am about the sort of creative process, which is always exhilarating and fun and a project. I'm amazed that you can get those, the feedback. I can find when somebody turns off and stop watching a film. You can monitor that, and you can find out when people are there. You're kind of naked in this world with the stats and the feedbacks and stuff. And it isn't all about, selling pants in my case, or the minor thing, but it's actually really, that was an example. It's for real. The feedback is absolutely there. It's extraordinary. The kind of comments you get back. Again, if it's democratising thing, I forget the point of coming into this, but yeah, the communication aspect, separate from the sort of graphic design aspect. I'm getting more and more interested in that actually. Just actually getting it out there is amazing.
And do you think that's? I mean, I'm really interested in the way that that's kind of changed recently. My experience is specifically in fashion, but I'm interested as well in what you were saying, Tom, that kind of the process behind things, how interesting that is, and how people are now wanting to see behind the scenes things. They're wanting to see kind of the process behind these images, and it's almost a kind of demystification of a lot of the stuff that's happening, I think. And I think that's interesting because that's almost a whole new level. You've got kind of the front-facing advertising or editorial or the actual product, and then you've got the process, which in itself has sort of become another product.
Yeah. I think you have to be quite careful because it's that fine line between exposing some of the process and telling a bit of a story, and then dispelling the myth. I think it's a fine balance, and when you just see everything that's been shown in a making of, you're a bit like, really? Okay, that's what it was all about, and it's sort of does sort of dispel the myth slightly. So I think it's really interesting because it means that things are kind of debated and discussed a bit more when we can perhaps see the process that goes on. But I think, as I say, as creatives we have to be careful about how much of that.
I think behind the scenes of something boring is still boring. It's sort of. You have to be behind the scenes of something interesting, on the Vogue app there, the only behind the scenes film, actually there's two, there's an Emma Watson shoot, but I did one on Shona Heath where there was lots of sets to film. I mean, I'm so tired of behind the scenes and a bit of makeup being done and a wobbly camera. It's not. We've got to have a story to tell. I think that's what's interesting. It is storytelling, I think, and the change for me with doing essentially fashion campaigns where you kind of do there's 2 points of contact for spring, summer, and autumn, winter. Is that if you then got a community, an engaged online community interested in your brand, you have to do other things. You have to stream the catwalk show, you have to tell the story of that, you have to tell the story of the development of a zip, the story of the design of a shoe, a celebrity appearance in, all these companies. I've talked to 3 people this morning that have all got online, content creation companies that I've met here, that are walking around here. It's like, there is this need for it, and you have to quite see where that appetite will go and when it will be fulfilled, but it's a lot more work.
Yeah, absolutely. That idea of kind of telling stories, I'm wondering, do you find that kind of more difficult, the fact that now there are all of these different stories and you have to kind of pull in a film team to film behind the scenes, and then you've got to pull in kind of film team to film front of house and things like that. So I suppose that's the idea of getting more collaborators to work on different areas that perhaps you've never had to deal with before.
Oh, absolutely, that's my point. The role, I've got to go and oversee an edit of a behind the scenes film, much as I've got to go and oversee the edit of a set of stills. Behind the scenes is kind of sort of first base on these things, but I think that what's interesting is I think that because the way that the internet can join up subsets of people, if you want to find the car part for a 1951 thing, you can. If you want to find the story of model fan sites, for example, every new young model, the moment they make it has a fan site following. It's quite extraordinary the fact that these people can find each other and make forums and make things. There's a real, there are little communities within communities, and so somebody somewhere is interested in the fact that shoe was made that way, or for a brand. I'm not saying this is kind of News at 10 material, but and I hope we're not just kind of putting out lots of rubbish, but it is kind of joining up people that are sort of interested in something.
I think it's kind of the weird thing as well is that, as you were saying, there's such a demand for that now from the public, this kind of odd demand of, maybe it's sort of this reality TV voyeuristic thing, the idea of being able to look behind the scenes at something and kind of break it apart. There's so many people that want to see that now. I think far more than before, people they used to be happy with the final product, but now they want to know everything behind that. And maybe it's about getting things quicker, which is the other point that you made about the iPad was really interesting, that within 6 months you would have done it differently because things have moved on so quickly.
It's so fast. Also, it's not like there's a willing or, it's been slated. If you do anything online, it gets slated because everybody gets on the chat room and goes, don't like this, don't like that, thumbs down, thumbs up. It's not the wonderful world out there in many ways, but I like it because it's alive. You're kind of getting stuff out there.
Have you found it the same way? Is the same sort of demand? I'm speaking, as I said, sort of quite specifically from fashion, from a website that's fairly. One of the reasons for us existing is to show the process behind fashion, so I've kind of waylaid it into that way a little bit. But do you see that a similar sort of demand in different industries?
Yeah, I do. I think we're all sort of boringly agreeing with each other. We're not arguing. I think whether it's the collaboration of technology, whether it's how things are being communicated, it's all going in this direction, and it's much more fragmented than it was 10 years ago with newspapers, magazines, television, and radio. It is just breaking down and building. So I think you either embrace it or you sort of try and fight against it. And to me, the possibilities have increased. I remember sort of 10 years ago, people said, magazines were going to die because of the internet or something. In fact, it went the other way. In fact, more magazines exploded, and it became, and again, it has moved on. People can't predict where the movement is, but to me, it's.
I think
you finish.
We're going to try and wind up as well, but someone made a really interesting point to me the other day about advertising at the end of the 50s, which has been a sort of, the sort of Mad Men type era. Advertising had been very much print based. The gods were the photographers, and that was that. And then television came along, and they originally looked for the creators of their content to photographers to make the TV commercials, and they couldn't make that transition then in the 50s. And so all the ad agencies on Madison Avenue said, where can we get films made? And so they started hiring Hollywood directors and flying them in and out of New York to make TV commercials. I think we have a change which is even bigger than that now. And I think the interesting question is where we look for the creatives for new media. I struggle to get moving image out of some of the top still life photographers in the world, which all have red cameras and production teams and this, that and the other. However, they can't make a film, they can't make a digital asset. They think they want to direct, they think they're going to, I don't know what they're going to do, but I don't need them to direct a film anyway, because I actually want a 3-second moving phone lip, or I want something else. It's not, the game's changing so fast. I don't know. I mean, this is sort of photographers and books out here. Are these the people that are going to make the stuff? I don't know, actually. I think that some of the bloggers, some other people are doing more interesting new media things than some of the traditional people.
I think that's interesting, because I think what it goes back to is about kind of great thinking and good ideas, and you can express a great idea through any number of media, but in its essence or in its kind of genesis, it has to be a kind of really great idea. And I think it's fine. We can have, and I think that's what there has to be a kind of refocusing on, if you like. That everyone's got all of these possibilities out there, all these different channels, but the really interesting content is done by people who have got smart thinking.
That's quite interesting, because what the next thing I was going to ask was if you feel that kind of all these digital tools have enabled people to explore new possibilities, or if it's sort of made them complacent. The idea that, you can do something that's a film online and it's not really that innovative, but the fact that the medium of it seems innovative.
I think it's both. I think you get complacency and you get inspiring things. So, the quality of ideas is always in its minority, and Robin touched on, this conversation will be out there and everybody's saying, well, a bunch of tossers or whatever, and that's the reality. But it's like, do you want to watch SpongeBob or Panorama? I mean, the choice is everybody. So I think the difference will always be that way.
Do you have some time for questions? Sure. Okay, I was just wondering if anyone here had any questions at all for our panel.
We overrun, don't we?
Just a wee bit. Oh yeah, the lady at the back.
Sorry? Do you think we're diluting creativity, you said? Well, I think if by simply the volume of it is, I've been around. I remember sort of when I had my studio in Paris at the end of the 80s, there were probably about 120 fashion photographers in the world, and I probably met more. Do you know what I mean? And it's like the idea is a massive, and anyone you talk to, the idea is great. But you know what? It's a bit like music, it kind of goes through so many things, and then somebody picks up a guitar and does something brilliant and touches your heart again. I think that these are eternal truths. This is all gadgets, really. Love is love, sex is sex. There's still, life carries on, but I do think that the real key is in the sort of broadening of it and the democratizing of it. There's still good stuff, and maybe there's more shit, but there's more good stuff probably.
I agree.
Sorry, I talked to you.
No, but I don't seriously. But I think the percentage from 30 years, 10 years, there'll always be some really brilliant stuff. And I just agree with Robin. I think the percentage of of rubbish out there has increased, but I think there are generally also more better ideas.
I think that's interesting because I did a talk and someone asked me if I thought that fashion film online meant the death of kind of great images, like, you know, the great Irving Penn images from the 50s. And my response was, if something is that great today, it will be recognised. Which I think, even if there's, you know, 10 images or 10 million images, I think if something's great, it will be recognised. Like you said, it's going to, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down. It'll be people kind of highlighting it and telling people what's good. So I don't think it's necessarily a case that it will dilute it.
I mean, I think that when I did the Vogue book, the Unseen Vogue book, going back through the archives and stuff, you know, deliberately putting in bad pictures by Helmut Newton in the book and stuff like this, because people forget how edited the past is. You know, if you actually think of, you know, you pick up a book that says The History of Fashion Photography, it's got 200 pictures in it. There's, you know, 2 million pictures, you know, and they've managed to find 200 good ones to do the book. There's a lot of crap done in the 60s and the 70s and 50s as well. It wasn't all Irving Penn.
I think that's maybe a good point to end on. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.